Is my postulation is veracious. We are being led to a space arena where we will be coerced into an archaic gladiatorial ritual against a legendary Gokko, the fiercest creature imaginable.
Zarkov, I've faced the defensive line of the Chicago Bears. Can't imagine anything fiercer than that.
This is Flash Gordon Classic, which is just one personal project of several from Disney animator Robb Pratt, whose credits include Pocahontas, Hercules, Tarzan, Atlantis, and more. I sat down with Robb to talk both about the craft of animation and about the journey he's taken to forge his path into that world. He's got a lot of insights and a lot of lessons. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. Robb, welcome to the podcast. First thing I'd be interested in knowing is, how did you get started in animation?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. You live long enough and you find out life has like pluses and minuses, and the big plus was I knew early on what I wanted to do. I love drawing, but it wasn't about comic books for me. I would grow up, and here in LA, we had a local TV show every Sunday morning hosted by this character actor named Tom Hatton. And he would show you for 3 hours every Sunday morning. You got Fleischer Popeye cartoons with a mixture of George of the Jungle and Super Chicken. And then in the middle, Tom Hatton would draw. He had a little set like he was on the bay, and he would draw for you. And I just knew, like, wow. And same thing with Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes, that there's comic books, which I love Superman early on as a kid, but that was just drawing only. But then if it was an animated cartoon, oh my God, it was like voice acting, music, color, drawing, performance, timing. And I just knew early on that was it for me. I remember in kindergarten telling kids, when I grow up, I'm going to be an animator at Disney, because I just knew this was the thing that I just loved it. And, now I'm grown up, and you kind of don't believe in magic anymore. But for me, still seeing a drawing that's moving and living, and you believe that it's alive, that's magic to me. So I was just lucky to know from an early age that was it for me. Very focused.
Yeah, I agree. I've considered the question, like, why is hand-drawn animation so, why do people like it? And I do think there's something that, like, it's kind of like the one magic trick in the world that even the magician himself is fooled. That,
yes.
Really.
I'm going to steal that quote. That's great. I love that.
Okay. So then how did you actually end up at Disney?
Yeah. So, it's weird. I was again, plus and minuses. I was born very poor. I had raised by a single mom, and she suffered from mental illness, and we were on welfare, and that's terrible. But I was born and raised in North Hollywood, just a couple miles from the Walt Disney Studio. So I always had a big, giant bullseye for me to aim for. And, like, schooling was not going to be an option. Of course, I wanted to go to CalArts, but it just wasn't going to be in the cards for me. But also right in my hometown of North Hollywood was the Cartoonist Union headquarters. And I would ride my bike and I would take the bus. And as I grew up, I would kind of pass this place wondering, what is Motion Picture Screen Cartoonist Union? What is this place? And then, and then when I came of the age, like in high school, I found out, like, oh, that's okay. They're unionized and they give classes there, and they're not accredited. I'll never get a degree, but I can kind of learn how animation is done. And so I took a course or two, and I realized, wow, all of the instructors are like Disney guys that just wanted to make a few extra bucks at night. So now I'm getting like an introductory course from Bud Hester, who was like Milt Kahl's assistant at Disney and worked on Sleeping Beauty. And he kind of gave you, like, here's the industry, and then now take the class that you want. And then I took a storyboarding class, and I took an in-betweening class, and I took an animation class. And that was with Ruben Aquino, who had animated Ursula, the Sea Witch in Little Mermaid. And so not only were you learning at night, but you were getting insider info on how the studio was going. So Ruben would say, well, we're working on a movie, Lion King, right now, and there's going to be a character named Scar, so you can guess what he's got on his face. And he was, kind of funny about it. But then you could ask, like, wow, when will they be looking for people? What do I need to learn just to get in? And So with taking in-betweening classes, for anyone who, I'm sure everyone that listens to this knows about how animation works, but just to be on the safe side, in-betweening is kind of like the entry level to animation, where the animator draws all the key poses to kind of describe the movement and the performance. But then so he or she can move on to their next scene. They won't do every drawing that makes fluid movement. They'll do enough drawings to kind of figure it out. And then they'll kind of chart, like, can you add drawings that go in between my key poses? And so an in-betweener comes in and kind of like, everything's been worked out. I just need to add the in-between poses. So I learned just enough to kind of figure out how to do in-betweening. And then I would find out, like, oh, Lion King, that movie that Ruben was talking about, it was a huge, giant hit. And we already have, like, Aladdin was a hit and Beauty and the Beast was a hit. So Disney is going to ramp up. They want to do not just one production at a time. They want to piggyback them. And they're looking for folks now. So you better test if you want to get in there. So I took a test for Pocahontas. Didn't really nail it, but it was about, 8 months later, they called and said, all right, we need in-betweeners on Pocahontas. We're kind of in the crunch now where, we scuffle about and figuring out the story. The movies take about, on average, it's different from movie to movie, but on average, they take between 3 and 5 years. But it's funny, the whole first few years is figuring out the story. And then, oh my God, let's work 24 hours a day to get it animated in the last 6 or 8 months. So they need a lot of folks on hand. So I got hired on that crunch period on Pocahontas.
Huh. Okay. So did you in between the character Pocahontas?
Right. Yeah. So everything when it was traditional animation, it was all because, gosh, the quality of drawing is so high.
Yeah.
So you got assigned to a character, so you could master drawing that character, not have to worry about drawing everybody. And luckily, I was just eager. I was hardworking, maybe because I had such a humble beginning. Once I saw a little bit of a door open, I had to kick that thing open, and I worked hard. And so I got hired onto and then also because Pocahontas is a main character, she has a lot of footage. It requires a larger team. So I was able to get on that Pocahontas character, which was amazing to me because now I was in cleanup, but I'm kind of working on Glenn Keane's team. And Glenn Keane is like animation legend, definitely Disney legend. So I could not, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe I was at this place, coming from where I came from in poor in North Hollywood, and now working on this historic main lot with these animators that I just idolized growing up.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you worked with Glenn Keane or, I guess his unit, or with him directly, or
not well, kind of indirectly, because Glenn and his team were doing the rough animation. And then as an in-betweener, I was in cleanup. So we were cleaning up the drawings and getting that fluid movement, but with the nice clean line. And on that show, I learned what thick and thin lines mean. Like the line kind of tapers to a nice, nice thin thing, but it goes thick as it goes through. And you learn how to build on that. And it takes about an hour drawing. So I wasn't directly with him, but then there would be meetings where he came in and talked to us about what he was trying to, capture with Pocahontas. And of course I was just stars in my eyes. And I thought, well, I got hired for a crunch. And I had learned from the older folks that were more experienced. They're like, yeah, a lot of times it's the crunch, it's all hands on deck. But then when we're done, they kind of pare down to start the next movie. And then maybe you'll get called in a few months or a year to the next movie. So I thought, gosh, this window might be small for me. So my first week, I brought in my Art of Aladdin book because, oh my God, I loved Aladdin. And I got all my heroes to sign it. So Glenn drew a drawing of Aladdin for me, and I got to talk to him. And as I talked to him, it was like a nervous, crush. I had my voice was doing that quivering thing. But I got him to sign it. Eric Goldberg drew a genie for me in there. And I just got, all my heroes to sign this book. But little did I know, with my passion and my this work ethic, that poverty kind of ingrained in me. Here it is, gosh, that was 94 when I got hired. We're going, past 25, getting close to 30 years ago. And I've kind of maintained this career at Disney.
Wow. I was going to ask you too. I'm glad you were talking so much about in-betweening because I had quite a few questions about that specifically. Is there, because it is kind of an entry-level job, is there much creative freedom there? I mean, you're not choosing like breakdowns, are you? Or are you?
No, really, it's all about execution. And for anyone who, be realistic, right? If you choose this as a living, there are little creative glimpses, but it's not a super creative job. It's teamwork. It takes so many people to make this happen. And so a lot of it is just being really good at executing it. And it's creative for very few. And then, look, everybody has somebody to answer to. Your animator has the director to answer to. The director has the producer to answer to. The producer has the studio to answer to. So, even if you're a producer or director, you're kind of, you're at the will of what the studio wants in maintaining their brand. They built this brand up for, in 2023, this company will be 100 years old. They've spent time building this brand up. So, you have to, it's all honoring that brand and, finding your spots where you can be creative and add to it. But I think, don't go in disillusioned that you're going to be like the next Walt Disney necessarily by working at Walt Disney. If you want to be the next Walt Disney, you got to, start your own thing. When Walt was growing up, and of course I admired this man a lot, but the predominant studio was the Fleischer studio. They were making those Popeye cartoons that I talked about. They were the big thing in the business. But Walt didn't go work for Fleischer. Walt was like, I'm not a follower. I got to do my own thing. Like he made his own thing. So if you want to be creative, it's kind of a balance. You got to, you work to kind of be realistic and make a living. And it's collaboration, which also means sometimes arguing, sometimes not getting your own way. And if you have that artistic itch, you got to kind of still do that on your own.
Fascinating. That makes a lot of sense. Another question that's a little bit just in terms of roles in betweening and things. Animating, I think, specifically hand-drawing animation, takes a lot of different kinds of animators. You have the in-betweener, you have assistant animator, animation assistant, lead animator, supervising animator. Can you kind of break down like who are these people and what do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it can get confusing, just like you mentioned. It's kind of broken up into two factions, at least when it was classical Disney animation, right? So you had rough animation and then you had cleanup animation. Mm. So it started with rough. They got the storyboard, they watch the reel, they know how the performance needs to be. So you have a lead animator who I'm going to be the head of this team. So Glenn Keane would be, I'm going to be the head of the Pocahontas character. And then John Pomeroy, okay, I'm going to handle John Smith. And so every character had a lead animator and then their team of animators under them. This is all in rough animation. So an animator would rough their scene out, do, like I said earlier, kind of the poses that describe the performance, get a hint at the timing. No, that's not being fair. Being precise with the timing and drawing, like nailing the performance down. But then wanting to move on to the next scene would have a rough in-betweener that would do not the cleanup art, the rough in-betweens on that scene that the rough animator is working on. So now he can go work on another scene, he or she can go work on another scene, get those rough in-betweens back. Okay, let's pencil test, meaning let's shoot it under a camera and see how it's playing out with all the in-betweens added. And now that it's smooth, and we're going to refine the timing as we go, because I did my best guess, but now that I see the in-betweens added, we're going to refine it and get the timing just perfect.
Oh, wow. And
then do another scene. So those two would work together, show the director, get approval. All right, here's some notes for your scene from the director. Let's go back to our drawing boards and we'll kind of tweak things and address the notes. Once everything is approved, all right, we love it. We cut it into the movie and it's playing perfectly. That scene's approved. Now it goes to that other faction, the cleanup department. And what they're going to do is the animator couldn't spend time doing an hour on one drawing. That would be crazy. That would take forever. So now it's going to go to the cleanup department and they're going to take the cleanup lead is going to be the lead of that character. They're going to assign the scenes to oh boy, this one's a close-up. We better give this to our A player. Oh, this one, Pocahontas, is really small. We can give that to kind of maybe of a newer player. And that lead now will start cleaning up the main poses like the animator did the main poses. And then with all the in-betweens, now they're cleaned up to a fine line and everything's described perfectly so that it can be cell painted. And now we're going to give those to cleanup betweeners, and they'll do the in-betweens. And those are, that was my first job. That's the kind of the entry level. It's all been figured out by the rough animator. It's kind of been pared down by the cleanup animator. Now you're just kind of like, we got to execute. We got to be a team, and we got to get, a million drawings done for this movie. So that's kind of how the two departments work together.
Okay. And is it necessary if you're interested in sort of climbing the ladder to go through each one of those positions on each side, or?
Well, for me, because I didn't, like I said, like a great education wasn't going to be an option for me. So I got in any way I could, and they needed cleanup in-betweeners, and that's how I got in. But I would say most of the animators never went through cleanup. They went straight from drawing and animating and figuring out movement, and then getting that job into rough animation. It wasn't many that made the crossover from cleanup into animation, but I always wanted to be an animator. So that was just kind of my means to my end. But I would say that's not generally the steps that are taken.
And then one more question on in-betweening. I'd be curious to know, like, how can you tell, like, what makes a good in-betweener and what makes kind of a weaker in-betweener, where you think like, well, you got more work to do?
Well, gosh, one thing is because you're seeing hundreds of drawings go by that give the illusion that it's one drawing that is moving. So maintaining that line quality, especially when I said on Pocahontas, it was thick to thin. And it was the same kind of thing on Aladdin too, especially on the genie. So you have to maintain that line quality, and the way it even tapers off, it has to be consistent from drawing to drawing to drawing. So it'll look like one drawing that's moving. You can't have any flickering that are blowing your illusion. That we don't want the audience to forget the story and be distracted that they're watching moving drawings. You want them to believe it's one drawing that's moving. So it's getting that line quality to be consistent. And, that's, you use your light box, you check the drawings on top of each other. You roll your drawings to see how they're rolling together. To some degree, maybe not for a cleanup animator, but for a rough in-betweener, kind of understanding movement. And, Bud Hester at that union class brought this up really early on. And he was bringing it up like, well, computers will never do in-betweens because, and, he got proven wrong. But the point that he made is very, very valid, where he's like, imagine a hand catching a ball, and you have a drawing that's coming toward it, and then it's going to capture it. But he's like, a bad in-betweener would have the glove closing as the ball is coming to it, because they would just be not thinking, and they would just do an in-between to that motion. But somebody that really understands motion would know, no, that the hand will stay still until the ball hits it, and then it will react to it. So there are little things like that. It just knowing movement, just being observant. And so many of my mentors said, be observant. And it took something simple like that, took years to really kind of understand, like, be observant, watch people, watch how movement happens, watch how people show emotions. And you go, well, I am watching. No, but are you really watching? Are you really analyzing it? And that thing is very much what Bud Hester told me is so important to remember. Yeah, the hand will not react until it's hit, and then it'll react to it. So that would make the difference between a really good in-betweener and one who's maybe not, still has some growing to do.
That's interesting. You say it can take even years to learn that even simple idea, because I remember recently I heard Don Bluth say that it took him 2 years to really get animation. And this is 2 years of going to the Disney studio every single day. And I've been like, oh my goodness. And I was curious, do you recall how long it took you to really sort of like get it and sort of think like an animator?
Yeah, see, and that's Don Bluth. Like, that's one of the best that ever lived. So for him, it took 2 years. For me, I'm sure it took much longer. And the thing is, though, that is great is if you're passionate and really love something, it's a lifelong pursuit. So even at this stage of my life, I don't know if I fully get animation. I'm getting it at a certain degree, and I want to continue to grow. I did see, of course, I won't name names with this because it's not a great thing, but I would see animators that they kind of got to a certain level and they were satisfied there, and they leveled off there. And now that level is probably, it may be higher than I'll ever reach. But I wasn't very inspired that they stayed. I want to be a guy that is continuing to be humble, continuing to learn, continuing to be better. Now one of my heroes is Miyazaki. I want to be one of those guys that when I'm 90 and I animate a short, people are going to go, "Oh my God, did you see that Robb Pratt? I didn't think he could get any better. At 90, he's still going." So it's just, for me, a lifelong pursuit and learning. The more you learn, to me, the more empowered you are. You feel strong. You're like Superman. You feel like stronger each time, the more that you learn stuff. So I don't want that to ever end. And I don't want the passion to ever end. And if I see a weakness, that's a hard thing, is seeing a weakness in your own work. If I see the weakness, I want to attack it so I can get better at it.
Wow, gosh. It's funny you mentioned Miyazaki too, because he keeps retiring, but you can tell he cannot. He has a drive that will not stop, which is incredible.
He loves it too much.
Huh.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So then, we'll keeping with kind of the theme of Disney days, then coming back a little bit into more of the craft. You moved on. Did you go on to Hunchback of Notre Dame? Was that?
I did. Yeah. So that was my first, with all the kind of more experienced veterans telling me, well, you probably get laid off, and then they'll call you back. Well, also, unfortunate and then fortunate. This bright-eyed kid, just excited about being there, not fully understanding what was going on, but right as I was getting hired on Pocahontas, this huge news was happening. Jeffrey Katzenberg was leaving the studio, and he teamed up with Geffen and Steven Spielberg and was starting a brand new studio called DreamWorks. And of course, Katzenberg had all the Disney animators on his speed dial, and he was trying to get them all to come over to his side. And so I normally probably would have gotten let go, but Disney was worried, if we let people go, is DreamWorks going to scoop them up, and then we can't hire them back when we need them. So I got to stay on. And it was, of course, a wonderful time. And that doesn't always happen for artists. It was a good artist time. And so I stayed on to the end of Pocahontas. There might have been even a quiet month or two where like told you, I was born poor. I couldn't imagine having a job where I was not working my tail off every single hour. But we had a quiet month or two. And then I got, put on Hunchback. And what was great is there was a need for rough in-betweeners now. So this is I saw an opportunity to get out of the cleanup world, get into the rough animation world. And they, I guess they must have needed folks because they did a test, and, like a handful of people were going to make it. So I did the rough in-between test, got on there. And then I met one of my greatest mentors in my career, Russ Edmonds, who was animating Phoebus, the kind of suave leading man, and other than Quasimodo, that Kevin Kline voiced. And so now I was doing rough in-betweens, not just for an animator. I was doing rough in-betweens for the lead, and struck up a great relationship with him. And that's the thing in this business too, is, well, in any business in life, be nice to people, be respectful to people. And I felt like I've got two ears and one mouth, because I'm supposed to listen much more than I'm supposed to speak. And when Russ was, he knew that I wanted to be an animator someday. And he was just the best, because he's like, you know what? After you in between this Phoebus shot, I left all the jaws off. I want you to put the dialogue mouth shapes onto him. Or I left the cape off. Can you add the cape onto him?
Wow.
And it was just the best thing. And I was, it was that old fashioned ritual of getting information passed along on a personal level from one person to another. And it was beautiful, and I loved it. And it was fantastic, a game changer in my life for sure. And I still love Russ to this day.
Wow. Yeah, that's really amazing. And I think too, your story is especially interesting because you didn't go to CalArts. It almost seems like there were some guys from another generation who also didn't go to CalArts. Disney, for whatever reason, decided, let's hire artists and see if we can teach them to animate. But today it almost seems like you've got to have a really killer Instagram or go to CalArts. which is maybe not the case, but I think it's cool that you didn't.
Definitely in my day, and there were the CalArts guys, and they're all very tight with each other. They definitely have they share a kinship, of course, and you can feel a little bit like on the outside looking in, and they help each other out as they should. It's definitely a bonding thing, and they all a shared experience. But you got to make it somehow or another. And I did have one CalArts. We became very close friends, and he said very sweetly to me, like, "Hey, Rob, at least you don't have to pay these student loans. I'm still paying them." So it worked out all in the end.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'd be really curious. Probably, at least in my top 5 favorite Disney movies, is Hercules.
Oh my God, so good.
I'm kind of curious. What was your role on Hercules? What did you get to?
Yeah. So, I was in cleanup on Pocahontas. I made the switch over to Rough in Betweener on Hunchback. And then Hercules was so demanding. They were going to make we need more animators. Oh my God, this is my turn. This is my chance. And even, I wasn't smart enough. Who would be smart enough? I didn't know CG was going to come along, but I still did even then recognize that, boy, in the long history of this company, there are ups and downs. And we're definitely on an up right now. And I'm not going to assume that we're always going to be this busy. It's going to go down at some point. If I can do anything, I never got a college degree. If I can become a Disney animator, I can have that title. I got to do it before this window closes. So I pushed really hard, and I wasn't married with kids yet. I lived at the studio, and I would do my, gosh, if it was a drawing an hour and cleanup, I would do my 8 drawings that day, and then I would stay. I'd eat dinner, and I'd stay until 1 or 2 in the morning working on personal animation tests, leaning on the animators, showing Russ, what do I need to do? How can I make this shot better? And I was just working on test after test after test after test. If I saw, like I said, if you can identify a weakness, if I saw dialogue, when do you know when to put the mouth to the side? When do you know to squash the face and pop it? That's a weakness. I don't know how to do it. I got to figure this out. So I would just attack it. I do nothing but dialogue shot after dialogue shot after dialogue shot until that became my favorite thing to do. And then it repeats, like hair overlap. Sometimes you can chart like a head going from here to here and in between it, but hair overlap, it reacts to that. It's going to overshoot and settle. You can't chart it. I'm scared of this thing. Okay, I've got to do overlap. I've got to do characters with long hair, characters with cape. I have to attack it. And now I love it. Anytime I design a character, it has to have some kind of element of overlap because it's fun and it adds texture. So I just attacked it. And then I got to the point where I could be now an apprentice animator on Hercules. So I got assigned to young Hercules with another mentor, lifelong friend, Randy Haycock, who taught me how to animate and taught me how to clean up my drawings. So it'd be easier on the cleanup department once they got it. And one thing that's great is, I'm a huge Superman fan, and I'm watching our reels and I'm like, wow, this movie is kind of like Superman. Like he came from Olympus, like Superman came from Krypton. And then he was raised on the planet Earth by 2 farmers, just like Superman. And then he met a girl from the big city that intrigued him, just like, Lois Lane, just Hercules. And, it had so many parallels. So I thought, I better attack this thing. I gotta succeed here because I'm never going to get a shot like this again. And so, but as an apprentice animator, I would have to have reviews. They kind of felt like the program would be for a year. And if you make it, we're going to promote you. If in a year you didn't prove it, then maybe this isn't for you. So I had a year of doing production scenes, but when you're an apprentice, what scenes do you get? I get a shot when Hercules is like this small on screen and you can barely see him. Now I could draw it big, but they would shrink it in the computer. But I got all the scenes where young Hercules is tiny. And so, but now you have these reviews. So I was still working late at night and getting dialogue from, I'd grab dialogue from Luke Skywalker from the Star Wars movies, and I would animate young Hercules. And now I could do a close-up with dialogue to really show what I can do. And those were the scenes that got me promoted to animator, because I don't know if those little tiny shots were going to do the job.
Take these 2 over to the garage, will you? I want them cleaned up for dinner.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done.
All right, come on.
Huh. Now, I am thumbing through the Art of Hercules, the book. It seems like there was even just finding the artistic style was something of a journey because of where they started. It was really, really stylized, hyper stylized, and it sounds like Disney was kind of figuring out, okay, how do we maintain this, but also like Disneyfy it. And so I'm curious, like, once Disney settled on, okay, this is the look of Hercules, did you have any trouble, like, sort of adapting to all those swirls and that sort of specific look?
Yeah. Not just me, that's a challenge for the whole crew, and then it happened on Atlantis again when they wanted that Mike Mignola look, where they want this look that's very personal to an artist, and Gerald Starr for Hercules. But now you have to get 300 artists to conform to that style. And some are going to really get it and run with it, and some maybe not as much. And it's always a challenge. And the good head start that you have is everybody can just draw. I mean, gosh, they could all just draw so well. So it's now just like, can they get that style? And then I'm sure, I'm just guessing, nobody's told me this, but I from my educated guess, you probably have the studio to answer to. So when you're showing animation to the studio, they might be like, whoa, this is getting a little bit too off our brand. We've built this brand for decades. So it's that challenge of getting that, like, we want every movie to look visual and different so they don't all look the same, which would be boring. But then you also have to maintain the brand. Then you have certain artists that really get the new style, but then you have artists that kind of only know the Disney brand. So you do get kind of this mishmash. Hercules got it pretty well, I think. Maybe more so than Atlantis did. I think if you watch Atlantis, there's certain characters that really get the Mignola style, and then some that don't. And then the added layer, I know we were talking about Hercules, but to give Atlantis as a easier example, I went to a meeting and they showed us Mike Mignola, and they showed that, it's very graphic because it's printed material that we're looking at. So Mike Mignola would have black shadows, and they weren't softened or soft focused or anything. And they were jagged, and they were, graphic and edgy. So I got to work on Milo, and my first shot, it's not my responsibility to put the tones on, but I wanted to sell this Mignola thing that I was one of the guys that got it. And so I put it on there. And then, I don't know, I must have missed a meeting or something. I go to our dailies where we're seeing the first shots in color. And then I see, the shadows are just the softened Disney shadows. So something happened. Somebody said something that we couldn't go that far. So you just have all these balls in the air that you're juggling to try to get a new style that's fresh, but also maintaining the house style.
Interesting. Yeah, I got the feeling with Hercules, and it's funny you mentioned Atlantis too, because I remember seeing that look for the first time and it being really striking. But I got the feeling with Hercules that it almost seemed like the Disney studio, at least in the feature film arena, had not pushed style that much since like Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah. It's hard because too, and here's the great thing about working with a big company is collaboration and visibility. But then also, like I said, the negative is like, it's not always getting your own way, and it's sacrificing sometimes. And so, when it was run by one guy, Walt Disney, he could say, I went to this art gallery, this Ivan Earl guy. Oh my God, his paintings are beautiful. We're going to make Sleeping Beauty look like an Ivan Earl painting. And then it could happen. There was no committee to decide how far we were going to take it. But then, Walt passed on, and now it's become a corporate, and there's a lot of voices in the room. And to get everybody on the same page, you can imagine the challenge with that.
Fascinating. Okay. So then after Hercules, did you go next on to Tarzan? Okay.
Tarzan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were animating on Kerchak for that?
I was, yeah. At first I went back with my old buddy, Russ Edmonds, who was the lead animator on Kala. So Tarzan figure, and Russ, being my great friend, took me on, but I was very green. I was a young animator, and there wasn't a whole lot that you could trust me with yet. It was still kind of like if Kala's on screen and she's, kind of small. So Tarzan, it's funny, it's such a classic guy. I mean, I think it's Tarzan and Sherlock Holmes are like the most filmed characters in the history of cinema. And as much as Tarzan's been filmed and retold, that story went through a little bit of a struggle, and they stopped production for like, we're not animating anything for 6 months. We've got to get this story working.
Wow.
So in that time, they were like telling all the leads, hey, you've got to lose like, your weak links. We can't carry them for 6 months just sitting on their tail end. So I was the weak link. I was a brand new animator. And so several months went by. Thank goodness the studio didn't let me go for some reason. They kind of floated me and held me, probably not sure what to do with me, because they, from their perspective, they're probably like, well, he's, one of our weak links, but he's also a young up and comer. What do we do with him? And in that time, I kept doing my tests. One thing that was great, Disney gave us all zoo passes because we have a local zoo. And you felt like one of the classic Disney animators that drew real deer from Bambi. You could go to the zoo and draw apes, as your model. So every day I use that zoo pass and I drew apes, and I determined I don't want to be the weak link. I gotta draw. And then when production was ready to roll, I think the Kala team had been worked out, and I don't know if there was a room for me there. So, this guy, Bruce Smith, oh my God, this guy is like one of the most talented guys. And I've been drawing apes, and Bruce's office was right next to mine. And I went and introduced myself to Bruce and said, man, you're like a legend to me. And I've been drawing these apes, and you're working on Kerchak. Gosh, if you need anybody on your team, please consider me. And Bruce, what a guy, took me onto his team. Kerchak doesn't have the footage that I mentioned, like Pocahontas, that requires a big team. So there were only 3 of us, and it was great. I could feel like, wow, I am 1/3 of this team. Now, although Bruce handled all the juicy close-up acting shots of Kerchak, but I got some really good shots in that movie. And, it ended up, it was a challenge. Your career, anyone getting in any career in animation, you're going to have ups and downs, and you just got to stay positive. And it's so easy to get cynical and let cynicism kind of beat you down. And it's challenging, but you got to just stay positive, and you got to work hard, and you can't ever feel entitled to anything. You're going to have to prove yourself over and over and over again. I thought there'd be an end to this, but no, I'm still trying to prove myself. So Bruce took me onto that on that Kerchak team, and I worked my tail off, and I'm very proud of my shots. And I didn't get a lot of good juicy dialogue shots because Bruce, Bruce is going to get those. But I got like Kerchak got shot. He's taking a bullet for Tarzan. That's my shot. So I got a couple good ones in there.
Oh, awesome. That's a good shot. I remember. Yeah. That's I think that's a memorable moment.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So I'll probably wrap up kind of the Disney questions here because you've done so much more. But a couple more questions. So you also went on to work on Tarzan 2, and looking at your animation reel, it looks like you got to do multiple characters more within the same shot. Was that how that works? Or?
Yeah. So because Tarzan 2 was straight to video, those weren't being done at the main studio anymore. They were kind of, Disney had kind of developed this studio in Australia. And so they were animating most of the movie there. I think because, they didn't have the huge crew that we had in Burbank. They even subcontracted some work out to the Philippines. So that movie was, the budget's not what it is for a big screen release. They're lower, but I guess the producers of that felt like, there are a handful of shots that are kind of like very emotional, big shots. And we kind of like to have control of them. Maybe we can animate it. Maybe we can get an animator or 2 here in Burbank and work on those. And 2D at the main studio had kind of already moved on. We're going to do CG now, and I got let go. But the Tarzan 2 folks they didn't know me, but they looked on the credits for who worked on the original. Somehow they found my name and they, hired me, and I was glad to do it. And it was great. And, that gave me like 6 months of work after 2D kind of had died, and it was working on Tarzan. And because of these, because it was different and it was a lower budget and a lot of footage being done outside of the US, it didn't have that same special, like, oh, you're assigned to a character. You know, it's like, no, we need this shot done. This is one that we want to do here in Burbank. It's got Tarzan, Tantor in it. You just have to animate both of them, you know? And so that was great. It was really fun. And I was treated wonderfully, and I could still be at Disney and still be animating when it was a really hard time when you know, the feature studio wasn't supporting 2D anymore.
Yeah. Is that especially challenging when you're doing multiple characters in the same shot or scene? Because, you know, you have different, you know, they talk about how each character's walk cycle, you need to be able to tell looking at them from behind because of the way they carry themselves. And, you know, you're handling multiple characters in a shot. You have to kind of like maintain each of their specific personalities? Like, how do you attack that?
Yeah, definitely. The drawing challenge of knowing how to master, you know, them from every angle and squashing and stretching their face and having a grasp of it so you can distort drawings. That's hard. And then, you know, this is, and I'll explain this for anyone who's interested, because I didn't realize this when there's two characters on screen and it's two different animators, you know, they'll figure out in casting, like, which character kind of leads this shot? Like who's driving the movement in this shot? So that animator will get it first, and they'll kind of animate their character, John Smith or whatever. And if they're nice, they'll kind of rough in like a little bit of Pocahontas here and there to help the other animator that has to follow up. But if they're touching and if his hands are out, he has to show, you know. And then once that animator's done, now Pocahontas, you have to add Pocahontas, and it has to kind of register to what the other animator did. And what if John Smith, he drew the hand higher than it needed to be? You know, there's like adjustments going back and forth. Well, one thing that's good when you're doing all of them, you plan it out all for yourself. So there is a little bit that made that easier, you know, preparing it for you yourself and planning it just for you. It was really just the drawing challenge of mastering both characters. But, you know, there is a formula, or there's a design sensibility that you start to get. And on a given show, you know, there's an eye shape that's kind of like, oh, that kind of like, that's the classic eye shape for this whole show. Everybody kind of has that eye shape. So once you learn how to like, oh, I see kind of how Turk works. Turk works a lot like Kala did, you know, I kind of get that. So you have a little bit of a head start by just kind of knowing the graphic language.
Okay. And I guess do you have to figure out two separate like timing sheets too and things? Right?
Yeah. You would draw them on separate sheets of paper. They had their own charts for where the in-betweens went. And then you had to put them on the down shooter with the light box underneath so you could film them and see them both together. Oh. And that's another thing with timing. I'm going to, you know, let people know it's humbling. I thought when you first get it, oh, you do it and you have to know timing and you're precise. And then I realized, no, you're pencil testing throughout the whole process. You do a few poses, you got to shoot it, adjust the timing, add some in-betweens, shoot it again, adjust the timing, add some and you're doing all the way through. And for me, a big meaty scene, I can't even count how many pencil tests I went through. And I thought getting into this business, oh, you pencil test it once or twice, you know. No, it's incalculable. It's like all the way. It's a process all the way through.
And I guess do you do multiple passes of animation on any given shot? So like maybe shapes are moving, and then you're putting. How many passes might you do on a shot?
Yeah, it's usually several passes. Once in a while, and every artist can relate to this, you get in the zone, or you just, oh my God, isn't it the greatest when you're in the zone and you can see it and you're connected to it? And I'm just tracing what my mind is seeing, and my hand, it can't even go fast enough because it can't keep up with my mind already seeing it. So you get those glorious shots where it's like, I can see it and it's great. And then and those tend to be your best shots in your whole life, because there was just something about how you connected. And it's like, I animated this shot in like one night and it's my best shot. And then there are those scenes that are like, it's not really a great scene. And this is the one that I spent a week on over, doing it and doing it over and doing it over and doing it over. And I finally had to relinquish it because time ran out, but it's not my best scene. And I worked the hardest on that one. Why is the other one that I barely worked on so good? And it's just because you had a connection with it. I think a lot of artists feel that way with a painting or a drawing or anything. There's just some that just come together.
Yeah, sure. Last Disney question. One of the things I've been curious about for people who work on different projects, especially at Disney, is there one that Disney did that you didn't work on that you think, I would have loved to be on that project?
Ooh, wow. That is a good question. So because like I mentioned earlier, I got hired when they were piggybacking productions. So I was getting every other movie. And then we're all friends and we all go to lunch together and you're talking to your friends and, maybe I'm on Atlantis while some of my friends are on Treasure Planet. And like you hear things. So the ones that I missed, like I didn't get to work on Mulan. Oh my God, I love Mulan. I didn't get to work on Emperor's New Groove. I love that one too. So there are a few. And Mulan, I have kids that are, they're teenagers now, but when they're little kids, I would read them. I would read them bedtime stories and I had a Disney bedtime storybook. And Mulan, if I read it on my own, I was okay. But if I'm reading it with my kids watching me, that part where the dad, she presents the sword to her dad and the dad just throws it and says, the greatest reward is having a daughter like you. Oh my God, I start crying. Like, it's so beautiful. So maybe Mulan is the one. I love that, with all due respect to Emperor's New Groove, because I also am a huge, just Looney Tunes fanatic. Bugs Bunny is a huge hero of mine and a big reason why I wanted to be an animator. And Emperor's New Groove is probably the closest thing to a Looney Tunes cartoon Disney ever got. So there's that too. It's both of those. Those are the ones that, oh my God, I wish I could have my name on those and brag about that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And that's funny. That's great. You mentioned Bugs Bunny, because I'd love to segue into working for Warner Brothers and doing specifically Bugs Bunny. I mean, I've heard animators talk about it after this new Space Jam came out, finally getting to animate Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, like bucket list things, veteran Disney guys who just never got that chance. But you've had that chance multiple times, both in the new Looney Tunes show, directing that, but also in Looney Tunes Back in Action. Can you talk a little bit about that whole thing, but also like the difference between working on those? Because those are different looks and different, I think, even levels of animation.
Yeah, the style of movement is different. Yeah, I'll start with Back in Action because, I don't know if history will know this, how painful it was when 2D kind of ended at Disney. When you work at something that you wanted to do your whole life and it has heartstrings to your childhood and you finally get there and it's just like you're in the glow of the sun and it's like the most beautiful center of the universe. And I just wanted to be there for the next 80 years and be one of the 9 old men of the new generation. And then when it ends, it's heartbreaking, and it ended for all of us. And it was just so sad. And all these, you'd walk on the floor and you'd see everybody working and you would hear drawings roll and it was just beautiful. And then all those desks were gone and it was empty. And it was so sad. And it just like, I can try to describe it and I'll still never fully be able to communicate just how sad that was for all of us. And we're still like a family. We'll have reunions once in a while and it's still like a family. But Looney Tunes Back in Action was kind of like the life raft that we all swam to. So when you watched Back in Action, you're kind of seeing it's the Disney studio. We were just in a different building, but it's all the Disney animators were there because of Eric Goldberg bringing us all over. And then you get to draw these characters. And, like you were mentioning about like the design sensibility of trying to capture Gerald Scarfe for Hercules or trying to capture Mike Mignola for Atlantis. And you have time to try to master it. And it always felt like when the movie was over, all right, I'm ready to go now. I kind of am starting to get it, but the movie's done. And now you get to work on Bugs Bunny, this model that has been perfected over decades. And particularly for my taste, I love about 1949, 1950 Chuck Jones Bugs Bunny. That's where you get Bully for Bugs and 8-Ball Bunny and all my, he just looks perfect to me there. But that took 20 years to get him to look that perfect. And so now you get to animate this character that has been figured out from every shape, and the mouth shapes evolved. And now it's like I get to drive in this car and take it for a test drive, and it's just going to purr. It was just like beautiful to draw them. You had the pressure of like, I want to capture what this was. I don't need to reinvent anything. I want to live up to the legacy. So you had that pressure, but then also I grew up watching this. I know what this is, and it was just so great. And oh my God, I love Bugs Bunny. Like, what a great character. This guy can talk to the camera like Bob Hope did. But then, when I got to direct some Bugs Bunny shorts, he's like, we started referring to it as Bugs Magic, where Bugs can like suddenly change into Marilyn Monroe and everybody is fooled by it, or he could suddenly turn into a baseball player. And then he's so smart that he's a little rabbit, but it's always a big bully that's, stomping on him. But he's so smart that he can turn the tables on him. And then, if he has to like bake, if somebody's wobbly and he wants them to fall into a cake, he can like quickly bake a cake while, and like super fast and put it there. That Bugs Magic, what a phenomenal character. And what an empowerment story for anybody who's ever felt bullied, that you don't have to beat them with your fists. You can just outsmart them, because we all wish we were as smart as Bugs Bunny.
Yes.
I love him. I just love him.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talk about all the things that Bugs Bunny can do, because even just researching Walt Disney and things, it sounds like, Mickey Mouse became a little bit too precious to the public. At some point, this studio became, their hands were kind of tied. Like, we can't do this with Mickey because people won't accept that. But I don't think that ever really happened with Bugs Bunny. I mean,
yeah, maybe a little bit, because when I got hired onto these Wabbit shorts, that was kind of their pitch to me was, and look, so much of your career too, for all these aspiring animators listening, it's timing, and I love Bugs Bunny, but I got a chance to direct some Bugs Bunny cartoons just because I was in between two jobs. I had a job ending and I had a gig lined up that wouldn't be going for a few months. And they just happened to call me at that time. And their pitch to me was like, Bugs has kind of become a corporate symbol now. And we want to get back to him being a wascally wabbit. He's got to be Bugs Bunny. And they would show me that the shorts that they had in progress. And I got on my soapbox because in some of their shorts, Bugs would just go and kind of like mess with somebody. And that was somebody's idea of him being a wascally rabbit. And I go, no, you have to get in the head of these characters. They made something that was, it's a cartoon, but there's some kind of reality. There's some kind of connection to the human condition that connects us to Bugs Bunny. And we can't root for a guy that just messes with somebody for no reason. You've got to watch the cartoons. He's very tolerant. Boy, in Long-Haired Hair, there's an opera singer that's like rehearsing, but Bugs is playing a little like a banjo or playing a harp, and it bugs this guy. And the guy bullies him and beats him up, but Bugs is tolerant in that short. He gives him 3 chances. The first time is like, music hater, whatever. The third time, wabbit hater. Okay. Then it's the third strike is, of course, this means war. And so I got on my soapbox and I go, Bugs has got to always be the guy that is the table turner. He's got to get bullied first, and then he turns the tables on them. You have to because we root for somebody like that.
That is true. That's true. That's a good point. The old directors at the Warner Brothers Studios used to talk about, how they would hold each other accountable. Bugs wouldn't do that. Bugs wouldn't do that. And so together sort of formed. So that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I like to feel like in the shorts that I did there, that was always kind of those shorts they kind of struggled for a year with a showrunner that was kind of going for a scripted thing. And because they struggled, they brought in a new showrunner, and he was like, why are we struggling with Bugs Bunny? Let's just do it like they did in the 40s. Let's just get all the story people, no script. Let's just get a premise, and then we'll build on that, and everybody will draw in a room and we'll make each other laugh. And then I really, really hit it off with the head writer, Matt Craig. Love that guy. Oh my God. And we saw each other. And so for one of the story sessions, Matt Craig came into the story room and said, usually they would write like maybe a page or two as a premise to launch us. And then Matt just said, Rob, okay, I didn't even write anything. this is for you. We're going to call it Rabbits of the Lost Ark because I'm a huge, giant Indiana Jones fan. And the thing is, if you love Indiana Jones and you love Bugs Bunny, it kind of like fills in the blanks. It's like, okay, he's going to go into a temple because that's what Indiana Jones does. And we'll have Yosemite Sam doesn't want all the booby traps to hit him. So he'll bully Bugs into like, you go, you dumb rabbit, you do it. And then Bugs has to outsmart Sam into, to doing it first. And then it almost kind of writes itself, if you really love the material.
That's interesting. I was going to ask too, what is the relationship between the story artist and the animator? I mean, do they make a lot of acting choices for you? Is it sort of just gag choices for you, or?
Yeah, well, what it's feature and it's all done under one roof and we're all together. The board artist really only has to convey enough to, like, if you were to watch just the storyboard reels with the actors and maybe some temp music put in to get enough emotion and describe it. And then the animator, they know, well, the animator is going to handle that, but we just got to get it just enough to sell the idea. But then once you get into television, where now we're not doing it all together, we're going to do the story here, but we have to do so much footage in television. We're going to have to outsource that to other studios. So now in our storyboards, we really better describe the acting and really get it, a lot of poses and very clear. And then even then, the more we get into this digital age and now like work from home and you can communicate, even that's kind of changing. Sometimes you can film yourself with your iPhone. Like this is kind of like the performance I see, and then you can get it over to the animator that way. But yeah, so really, I don't know if the story artist is really in feature, if they're really thinking of the animator that much. They're thinking about how do I get the emotion over just in my sequence. So when we watch this as an animatic or a work reel, that everybody gets it. But then in television, you are thinking, I really got to help the animator here. And I've got to really show, maybe that animator doesn't even speak English. It could be in a different country. So I've got to really draw what the emotion is to help them out.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. I can't have a conversation with you without talking about your personal work. Because I think that's what's like. I'm like, dude, who's Robb Pratt? Dude, this is cool. You have your own kind of specific style, which is, I think, distinctly yours. Well, I guess before I get into the work, I am curious to know, how do you sort of shift in and out of all these different studios and styles and movies and things, and yet maintain your own distinct look?
Yeah, boy, I guess with anybody, because I get jealous of other artists that have a distinct look, and then you realize, God, I want my look to look like theirs, or why can't mine be so individual like theirs? Like Robert Valley comes to mind right away. Like, wow, what a like style, and how do I get my style to be that distinct? And then you realize, and I'm a Beatles fan. The Beatles, like their early albums, half of the songs would be cover songs. So they were trying to imitate Elvis, or they were trying to imitate Chuck Berry, or, Buddy Holly. And then I guess you just like, it's like a cook, you're never going to invent any like new ingredient, but you're taking these ingredients, and as you put them together, I guess the Beatles form their style. And I think that's just kind of what happens with an artist. You take all the things that you love and that you can do, and if you really stick to it, something will develop.
Okay, that makes sense. And you have several personal projects: Classic Superman, Flash Gordon, Carman, which I thought.
Thanks.
Yeah, I thought Carman was. I laughed out loud. It was very entertaining.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Man, 8 million and one cars in the city and only 8 million parking spaces. Well, would you look at that? Aren't we special? Man, he must be a total jerk. I guess I could leave him a note, but do you think he'd really learn anything by that? Really? Think about it. Too cool for me, huh?
So kind of you talk about this a little bit on your YouTube channel, just in terms of the genesis of Superman. the Superman project. But let's kind of start there. Like, what drew you to that, and to it has a sort of vintage feel, but also sort of very modern and very you. Can you talk about that?
Thanks for noticing everything that I'm trying to put into it. But yeah, that came out of, and this is like a lesson. Like I'm saying, you always are growing. You're always learning, and this career is going to have ups and downs. And I had a down part of my career. 2D kind of was over. But when Disney laid us off, I asked, can I buy my animation desk? It's really sentimental to me. And they let me buy it, and I brought it home. So I had this animation desk at home. And then, gosh, I got into a really ugly place where you feel like your career is not going where you want it to go. And I was getting jealous of colleagues that were getting opportunities that I felt like I was more deserving of. And after a while, I didn't like being cynical, and I didn't like these ugly feelings I was having. And I kind of was like wrestling with them. Like, I don't want to be jealous of other people. And I'm mad that I'm not getting these opportunities. But then I really was like, this is the hard thing to do for anybody who's feeling entitled. Check yourself, because I had the conversation with myself where I said, Rob, what have you done to like prove that you deserve these opportunities? You've animated something, but how does somebody know that you can write something, or you can board something, or direct something? You haven't proven it. And if you're really, really talented, then you got to put your money where your mouth is. You've got to show them. And if you have that talent can't be held down. You need to prove it, and you're not entitled to anything. So I'm working jobs, and I had a job that was fine, but it was not like at the level that I thought I was, that I was hoping that I was aspirational for. And so I thought, well, I can do this job, but I can't lose that thing that, like, at the beginning of the Disney career, I did my in-betweens during the day, and I worked at night to move up. I got to keep doing that. I'm going to do my normal job during the day, and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to be respectful, and I'm not going to be entitled. And at night, I'm going to do what I do. And the show I'm working on, okay, maybe it's not the most artistically satisfying show, but I've got this desk. I've got this magic desk at home. I can animate whatever I want on this thing. So I had it in my head, like, well, I'm just going to animate something. If I'm as good as I think I am, I got to prove it. And then, maybe the universe, the stars aligned or whatever. I'm going to this Halloween event with my little kids where you're throwing little bags into prize things. And I see John Hames Newton there. And I lean to my wife and I go, I think that guy played Superboy when I was a kid. And my wife's not a nerd like me. So she's like, she didn't know. I don't know who, but she's like, if you know what, maybe introduce yourself. Maybe he'd be flattered that somebody remembered him, that he impacted you. So I went up and I introduced myself to John, and I said, were you Superboy? And even John went, how did you recognize me? And I just like, dude, you do not know who you're dealing with. And we hit it off. And John is a great guy. He's still a dear friend. And I couldn't believe we drove away from that event with my wife. And I'm like, gosh, what if we became friends? What if we hung out and I knew Superboy? And it did play out that way because John is such a great guy. So while I'm wrestling with, I have this desk, I can animate whatever I want. And I just met John Newton, and I love Superman. I love Superman. When I was a little kid, I was, the Chris Reeve movie hadn't come out yet when I was really little. And I even loved the George Reeve series as a little kid. And I remember seeing the first image of Christopher Reeve as the new Superman on the cover of a newspaper. And I was like, oh my God, the guy has the curl on his hair. He looks exactly like Superman. I can't wait. And I saw the movie and I went nuts. I love that movie and the John Williams music. And oh my God, it just fueled this love for this character. I loved him so much. And, but out of all of that, in my 20s, they resurrected these long lost cartoons that Tom Hatton didn't play for me on Sunday morning that the Fleischers did. The Fleischers did Superman cartoons. And I saw one at a festival and my eyes popped out of my head. It was the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. And then I went to comic book conventions because back then, no internet. I had to find a VHS copy that had all 17 of these Fleischer cartoons. And I loved them. And as much as I love Reeve and as much as I love George Reeves, I think that it's my favorite version of Superman. They're so dramatic. The lighting is so bold and they're stylish and the setting and just gorgeous movement. So I thought, okay, I'm going to animate Superman. That's kind of like the Fleischers, but I love Christopher Reeves separating Clark Kent from Superman and pushing his glasses up. And I made a list of all the things that I would want to put like my greatest hits of Superman, everything I love about him, and Art Deco buildings and kind of like the Fleischer backgrounds. But then there was this architect, Hugh Ferris, that did beautiful architectural drawings. What if the short looked like his drawings? And so I gathered up a lot of this material. A couple images from the Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which is influenced by the Fleischer Supermans. And I made this presentation to John Newton. I said, I want to animate a Superman thing. And I want it to look like this. And before I could even finish my sentence, John, super guy, said, I will voice this for you. And my wife, Jennifer, can do Lois Lane. And now it had to happen. And I love that John Williams music, but I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I found like something more obscure and not known? And so there's the Kirk Alyn series of Superman that has this, again, dramatic, like the Fleischer, dramatic music. And it's 1 minute long. And I thought, maybe I can animate 1 minute and I can animate it to this music, kind of like Fantasia, where the music already existed, but now you're animating to that music and it seems like it was scored to picture. So I now had a thing to put on my timeline and he's going to do a punch on that thing. And I kind of storyboarded it. And just like you time animation, I had to storyboard it and constantly time it with the music and get it working. And it became an obsession. I had to work on it every night, and I was a family man. My kids are little. I didn't want to miss out on family time. So I waited till everybody went to bed and then I got back up and I started, I would draw this thing and it took about a year to do. And what was great is all of those feelings of being jealous, all of those cynical feelings, they all melted away. And even if I got notes at work on something where I felt like I know better, I don't like this note, I realized, this is my job. You're paying me to do this. This is your vision. Yeah, give me the note. I'm going to do your note because that's what you want. Because when I go home, I get to do what I want, Superman, the way I want. And he's going to look the way it's going to be 1930s and it's going to look the way I want. He's going to have a fedora. And I found like this balance in life, and it's helped my whole career since then, where I don't get as frustrated at work. You still got to be passionate and care about what you do, but I don't get negative feelings about things when they don't go my way, because I have a thing to go home. And I can, I don't have the collaboration at home that I have at work, where I have great artists to work with, but I also don't have to compromise. I can do it the way I want. If I was doing it for Warner Brothers, maybe they would say, well, we don't want him to have his little red shorts. Nope. In my cartoon, he's going to have his little red shorts. I don't have to compromise.
And then you also did classic Flash Gordon. But I think you did something kind of with it, just with the look of it and the red sky and the very kind of fluid animation. Could you just get into that briefly?
Yeah. So Superman, it kind of blew up in a way that you hope, and in a way that you can't ever expect. But I think because all the Superman fan pages blogged about it, and suddenly the views were like, wow. It's over like 600 million views now, or 600,000 views now. And Variety wrote it up. Hollywood Reporter wrote it up. The Howard Stern Show had me on their Geek Time segment. Like it was great. And then Warner's even called me and said, hey, do you want to do some of these official ones? And of course, yes. But, without getting into too many details, it's Hollywood, and it didn't happen. It's like, it's another career down, another just like 2D dying at Disney. It was like so sad when it didn't happen, because I thought it was going to happen for a while. And in that time, I animated a second one, Bizarro. Mm-hmm. And Warner's was a little bit like, hey, we were very supportive that you did one, and that was awesome. But look, we're cool with that, but don't do a series. Be respectful. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll stop. Which is too bad because I have like Bizarro Classic is in full animatic with the voices recorded. I've got a Lex Luthor Classic that I wish I could do. That's written but not boarded. But I had to stop, and I was like really sad. I'm like, oh, it was creating this balance in my life. I was doing something that made me so happy. And for Brainiac, of course, John and Jennifer Newton came back and did voices. I got another voice from the Superman family, and it was just so great. And now I can't do it. And nobody will ever see what I was doing. And Brainiac's ship, because he has a skull ship that he goes from world to world in. I made it like, Art Deco, like it looked almost like the Rocketeer's helmet, but with the brain, and it was when Superman went inside, it looked like Flash Gordon, a Buster Crabbe Flash Gordon interiors, and with Tesla coils and stuff. It was just so cool. And now I can't show anybody that I envision this. So I thought, what am I going to do? I can't do these anymore. And I'm so sad. And then I thought, well, I still really love that 30s aesthetic. And it's so cool. And I did love Flash Gordon. Like, wow, the predecessor to Star Wars. And it's so cool. And maybe it's because it's more obscure. It'd be more fun than doing, if I did a Star Wars fan film, well, I'd be one of like many that did it. But if I did Flash Gordon, maybe, that's a little bit more special. So I got it in my, I'm going to do this Flash Gordon thing. And like with Superman Classic, I've got to take all the great elements of Flash Gordon, like it's got to have Art Deco guns, and it still has to have like Dale. I want to make the girl next door and she'll be blonde, but then Aura will be the dark-haired, dangerous girl. It's got to have all this fun in it. But then, the 80s movie, I thought it was really great that they made him a football quarterback, because that's not what he was in the original strip. But like, wow, when you really kind of examine what makes Flash Gordon work, it's like, wow, this villain he's got, Ming the Merciless, he's not like Darth Vader. He doesn't have the Force. He doesn't have special powers. What Ming, at least from my point of view, he's a master manipulator. He knows if all these worlds are fighting each other, he can't possibly take them on. But if he gets them to fight each other, he can maintain peace. So who better to unite them would be like a football quarterback. Like, that's a great idea. So I'm going to do like the Flash Gordon that's part Buster Crabbe, but a little bit of Sam Jones. And so I got way into that. And then I thought, well, gosh, I had a real Superman or Superboy doing the voice on Superman Classic. I've got to get a Flash Gordon. So, kind of thinking of that Smallville connection, I looked up Eric Johnson, because he had played the bully to Clark Kent in Smallville. And then he was on a sci-fi series, Flash Gordon. So I contacted him, and oh my, what a cool guy. He like agreed to do it. So I got like lightning struck again. I got a real Flash Gordon to do this voice, and loved it. Loved doing every minute of it. And there's aspects to it that I like even more than Superman. Just, the whole, the male fantasy of like girls fighting over you, but you're like the star. It's so fun, and exotic locations. Again, like Superman as a comic book is the big game changer, because it was 1938. That was brand new. Like a guy that has superhuman powers and he wears a cape and tights. Like, this is a new thing. Everything that predated that was kind of Indiana Jones. Like, nobody had been on an airplane yet. So it was all these adventures in exotic locations. He'll be in a jungle, he'll be in a desert. And even Flash Gordon had that, like the exotic locations in Mongo, or all these different planets that had different terrains, that George Lucas kind of ripped off for Star Wars. So there's like all this great stuff. And I love Flash Gordon. And I had hoped that, well, maybe what happened with Superman can happen again with Flash Gordon. Maybe King Features will be into this. But, unfortunately, that's not happened. And Flash Gordon's in a funny area now where, I think the last I read, Fox had the film rights to him, but then like Disney has bought Fox, and who knows what's going on with this property? I don't know. And then my take is very old fashioned, which may not fly for what they'd want to do with the IP nowadays. But if you're listening, I'm willing to be flexible. But still, it was done just out of love. And what's great is, you post something on YouTube and it's scary, like right as soon as you hit upload, you're terrified. And then when you get all the positive feedback, like everybody's been just so positive about Superman Bizarro and Flash Gordon. And it's just been I've made friends through this. I'm now collaborating with this artist in the UK named Des Taylor. We're working on this new character, Eva Strongbird.
Looks like you could use a hand.
Huh? Oh, right, a hand.
And that came because Des saw these, this animation and contacted me. And so it's just been so positive. And it was the 10th anniversary of Superman Classic last year. And I had to do a Facebook post to kind of acknowledge it. And one thing I said about it was, when Superman punches the camera, that was kind of like me punching cynicism right in the face, with the super punch. And it's just anything you can do to battle that cynicism that is always trying to creep in, and these dark fears that we all have as artists, that we're not good enough or we're not where we want to be. And, we can't let these things stop us, because I don't know how many times we get to go around in this life. Maybe we may only get one time. And don't let these dark thoughts stop you. If you get kicked down, you just got to, like Rocky Balboa said, it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit, and keep moving forward. That's very inspiring to me. You just got to keep going, and always with passion, and always loving what you do. And maybe the reward won't be the one that you wanted. I of course would want a Superman series or a Flash Gordon series, but it's been rewarding in so many other ways. I think I got that Bugs Bunny job because at my interview, they showed Superman Classic and Flash Gordon Classic, and I got hired on the spot. So it may not open the door that you want, but it opens other doors, and you just got to keep doing, things with positivity.
Yeah, I think you did something special with those two properties. And I appreciate you saying all that too. That's inspiring too. As a fellow artist, I have ups and downs, and definitely discouraging times and things. But Rob, I could listen to you for hours.
Oh, thanks, man.
But in the interest of time, I have just one question to ask of you left. I heard you mention Eva Strongbird. Any personal projects kind of going now?
Yeah. So there's always Carman. Carman is very old. I started animating him back in, around 2000. And boarded this whole 7-minute thing, not realizing 7 minutes of animation is like a lifetime for one person to do. But so I set it aside, and it had done all, Superman and Flash Gordon, and kind of learned, this is how you composite. This is how you make a film. I'm going to go back and polish Carman, but I'll do a minute at a time, and I cut it down. And so I think there are 4 episodes, and to get folks to watch, I want to help people out that are like me, that want to know how to make their own film. So each one has a little tutorial, like, hey, here's how you record voices and then break the track down to animate to. Here's how you storyboard. Here's how, so please, check those out on my YouTube channel, Robb Pratt, where 2D animation is not dead. And Carman is on there. I have one more episode to do, and then the Carman saga will be complete. And then what I'll do is, I've learned, and it's become more polished as I've gone. I'm probably going to, put the whole short together and give a facelift to the early one, so it all looks as polished as I can make it. So Carman is always there, and I'm always chipping away. And one thing that's great is it's mostly figured out, so it's not hard on the brain. It's just sitting down and now executing. And then with Des, we're working on Eva Strongbird and the Marine. And Des is awesome. Des is a pop artist. He's a big personality. I love him. He's a fun guy, tall guy. And he drew Eva Strongbird. He drew these 2 characters and named them, and then said, Rob, I have no idea about story. I'm a visual guy. Do you want to partner up on this and come up with a story? And so when I see these 2 characters, I'm like, and he's like, it's World War II era. I know you like that. And it's like, okay, I want to exercise this muscle. I learned about some valuable things about story in my career. I want to see, like, World War II, like a lot of things in history, it's one of those, like, there's before it and there's after it. It's a game changer. And so let's show 2 characters that one is looking forward to when the war is over, and the other one is like, no, I want things to be the way they were. And what happens when these 2 philosophies come together? How can I bring themes in that are relevant to today. And so what we're going to do is we're making a graphic novel together. I kind of write the story, run things by Des, and Des goes, no, that doesn't work. Or yeah, I like that. Or Des will send me articles about, oh, this article is about, this project the Nazis were doing. Maybe this is something that comes into our story. So he'll give me inspiration. And then I kind of like will rough out like the panels. Des puts his beautiful like work on it. And so I believe we're going to have a really beautiful graphic novel together. And I don't know, it's, you don't get rich off of comics anymore, but it'd be good to have something out there. And if fans love it, maybe it leads to, because I'm an animator, maybe it leads to an animation thing someday. So we're in the midst of that. I've got the whole story. Like I believe, from watching Twilight Zone and great things, like my philosophy is you don't tell a story unless you know what the payoff is. You have to know the ending. And a lot of those Twilight Zones, the writer would go at the ending. Hey, they'd have to pitch it to Rod Serling. At the end, they say, To Serve Man is a cookbook, and then now they have to write, a story that gets into that ending. And it's so like everything makes sense. And that's a little bit of what our story with Eva Strongbird and the Marine is. Like, we clearly know like what Eva needs to learn, what the Marine needs to learn. And there is like the story is all beaded out. And we know the sequences that get us to this story in a very satisfying way for us. And so now it's just like, getting it down in panels. And I'd say we're probably the first third of it is roughed out. And then Des has some beautiful, oh my God, beautiful artwork of the finished panels. So we're really excited about it. And it's just so hard because, career and family. And I admire anybody who gets like a side project done, because just getting it done puts you in a separate category from any other artist. Because all of us artists, we're all creative. We all have our half-baked projects, but you got to have the finished thing, So I've proven to Des, I finish, Superman Classic, Flash Gordon, and Carman will be done. We're going to finish. I promise everybody. It's just like the time, like scratching away at it. But I got like a couple panels done today on Eva Strongbird and the Marine. So it's on its way. I hope people dig it. I hope people support it. And I hope people are inspired to make their own art because they see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, to anyone listening, I would recommend checking out Eva Strongbird and the Marine on Robb's YouTube. It's pretty great.
Thanks.
So yeah,
I did a little animated teaser for them.
Yeah. One final note too. You mentioned on Carman, you did some tutorials at the end. I actually found your tutorial on a timing sheet for dialogue really helpful, because that's one thing that's been like, I don't get this. And to watch you sort of break it down in like 2 minutes, I thought was really well done. So
awesome. I'm glad if I helped one person, I'm so happy. That's great. Thank you. You make me feel so good. Thanks.
So Robb, thank you so much for this great interview. Like I said, I could listen to you for hours.
Oh, thanks, man. We'll have to do it again sometime. Hopefully there'll be new stuff to talk about.
Cool. Awesome.